My name is Megan, and I'm happy to be here with you this morning. These are my friends Aaron and Maria Metthe, and they're here to talk a little bit about generosity today. We've had a few opportunities to have some of our members and attenders come and talk about how God has worked in their hearts and their lives through generosity. So I'm so glad you guys are here today. I'm probably going to these chairs spin, so forgive me. So Aaron and Maria, thanks so much for being here. So first tell us, how long have you been calling North Central your home? And how do you give? We talk about time, treasure, and talent. How do you give to your church family?
Yeah, my name is Aaron. We've been attending here just shy of 2 years, maybe a year and a half. And we've probably called North Central home for the last, I would say, 9 months or so. How we give right now, as we're still trying to get to know this church family and all that goes on here, we give primarily through our treasure and our time. Through our treasure, we've been married about 18 years, and every church family we've been a part of, we've found ways to invest in the church and what Jesus is up to in that local area. So we've utilized our time, talent, and treasure in various different ways. Here at North Central, right now, it's our time. We love inviting people over and practicing the act of hospitality and having people over, giving with our treasure what we can. We've definitely been through seasons of hardship and seasons of blessing, so treasure can vary from time to time. But that's how we give, and Maria's going to expound on that a little.
Yeah, we have a lot of people over. I think over the years we've learned we need to be intentional about opening our home, extending belonging to others. I am extremely social, but still, if we wait till Thursday to invite people over, it just doesn't happen. So we actually have a calendar. When we meet new people, it's kind of exciting of like, do they want to come over for dinner? Let's get them on the calendar. And we also intentionally make sure our schedule isn't packed. We have 3 kids. So for us, we don't allow our kids to do sports that might take up a Friday or Saturday. We purposely keep margin in our life so we can do life with others, grab a cup of coffee with them, open up our home, and really extend that belonging to get to know people, for us to get to know their stories, and for us to share our story with them.
I love that, because I'm not saying it's easy to give of our treasure, but sometimes it's not super easy to open our home. At least it's not easy for everyone. And when we think about how there are some people that would never walk in the doors of a church, but they might, go, and if they're invited to eat dinner at your house, they might say, yeah, I'd love to do that. So just inviting them into your lives is being generous in that hospitality. That's amazing. So do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I don't recommend doing this, but early on in our marriage, when we realized that Jesus was asking us to open our homes and be hospitable, neither one of us have the gift of hospitality. I'm super introverted, and she's always on to someone and something new. So once we've had him over once, she's checked it off, and I'm like, well, let's circle back. But when we first moved to Syracuse, we were living in apartments. And we invited some neighbors over. We went out and gave cookies out to people, invited them over. And we spent several hours cleaning the house. As Maria grew up, the house needed to be spotless and clean. And maybe 20 minutes, and I was arguing the whole time, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. About 20 minutes before, there's a hamper of clean laundry, and I just walked over and I just sort of like dumped it on the ground. And, that got Maria kind of freaking out. And our friend showed up from across the hall, and the first thing they said is like, oh, we're so glad you guys are a normal couple, that you have laundry laying in your living room. And it was a lesson of like, A, I should talk to her more about that before I do something like that again. But B is we learned that perfection and just inviting people where they're at, where we're at, is also completely okay. So just a quick thing on, it is tough to sometimes overcome getting people in your house to some of our cultural expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about that, and you talked about how Jesus was working in your heart to be hospitable. Tell us why you give. Why do you give of your home and your talent, your treasure, all those things?
Yeah, for me, looking at Jesus' life, obviously he was the first one to demonstrate a sacrificial, generous, radical act of love and sacrifice on our behalf. I also find it interesting in his ministry that he utilized, allowed, and relied on us as humans to give him a home, give him food. We would call Jesus housing insecure these days, like he didn't really have a place to lay his head. He spent a lot of time in other people's homes. So God working through humans during his ministry to allow Jesus, the Son of God, to have a place to stay and food. Also, Jesus was also very generous in his ministry. He fed people, he healed people, he worked in people's lives. And all that carried into the early church as well. So seeing just like generosity and giving being sort of like the underbelly or the infrastructure of like his church. Like this is how we demonstrate our love and our gratefulness to who Jesus is and what he's done for us through doing this for each other, I think has been impactful for me.
Yeah, we really feel Jesus is calling us to live into community with others and live life with them. I think for us that's hard to do if we don't genuinely know people. And so sitting across from a cafe, getting coffee, or having dinner with people, you can really get deeper into their story. How was your week? What was hard this week, right? Even laughing and sharing of the joys. There's just something about all of the other distractions that kind of go away, and having that pointed conversation. I've had people ask me, how was your week? But when there's other people around and you're at a mom's group, you're like, good. But when it's just you and somebody else, it kind of goes that next level deeper, which to me is life-giving, and I think it's life-giving to the others. I think everyone, I want to be known. I have that deep longing to be loved, to really be known. And so I guess I assume others want that. I think that's something that Jesus puts in us. And so I think we feel called to extend that belonging and really want to know others. And so we do that through food. And I think that maybe I'm making a spiritual component. There's something about eating food with someone else that just breaks down the defenses and makes you a little bit more comfortable rather than than just standing. So I don't know, food's powerful in that way, I think.
Definitely. We're foodies in our house, so I totally can relate to that for sure. Having some good food to get around, to talk, and get to know people's stories is super impactful. So you touched on that a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit more about how your generosity has impacted you, your family? You guys have 3 beautiful kids. How has being generous and giving impacted your family?
In March, I went on a 2-week missions trip to India. And it all started from inviting someone I had no idea who they were over for dinner. I literally sent her a text message and said, hey, I know you don't know me. I'd love to meet you. You want to come over for dinner?
And then she countered with, sure, but why don't you come to India with me too? So.
Literally. So Jesus just works through that. But we've seen the beginning of broken hearts mended. I think when someone can share their story and someone else listens, it feels like Jesus is listening, especially when the person that's listening is loving. And we have felt that from others over dinner. Discipleship happen, even sharing in other people's joys and excitements and triumphs they've overcome. I think we have just felt Jesus and his love and a taste of the already but not yet of what the kingdom is when we're sitting across from people and sharing our life and hearing their life over dinner. It kind of, when we're tired and it's like, oh, we're having people over again because, you have the long week and it's Friday, I think that's what keeps propelling us to go forward. It's that like inner drive what propels us to want to open our home.
And for me, I think the main impact of looking back of giving is it's moved me from like a seat of selfishness because I'm a very, very much an introvert. I could go a long time without eating with people. But it's moved me from that seat of selfishness to one of gratefulness of like, If any Bluey fans in here, my kids always say, "Oh, do I have to?" And they get that from this Bluey show. But I go from this, "Oh, do I have to give my time, talent, and treasure," to "Wow, I get to." And it's not something that I've ever arrive at. It's more or less which end of the spectrum am I on this week. But it's really been eye-opening for me to see how my gratefulness posture changes after we've practiced this act of hospitality or giving or generosity. And Maria reminded me of this. We've been through seasons of hardship and seasons of blessing. So we went through a season of hardship, and we went and stayed with some older church friends during this time. And eventually we got to talking about how hard the last 2 years were, and they responded as like, "Wow, we're very, very hurt that you haven't told us. You've robbed us of a chance to be a blessing to you." And so understanding that there's other people in the church family that want to be generous, they just don't know to be, or they don't know where to be, was important for me on how, to vocalize where we're at in life, but also to ask those questions of where others are in life.
Yeah, and if you're not having conversations, it is kind of hard to be able to maybe share where you're at. But if you're intentionally making those relationships, it's a little easier to say to someone, "We're really struggling right now." And to be able to then receive from others that maybe God is blessing them financially at the time, and they're able to give.
So
Yeah.
I will say, if we haven't met you yet and you want to meet us, I'm not offended. Invite yourself over for dinner. Just, "Hey, Maria, can you
Get
get
on
on
the
your
list.
schedule?" I would love that.
We often talk about generosity around here, and we talk about here in our church family, right? Our time where we give maybe to Kids Central or our worship team or our treasure where we give financially to our church. But I love how we're getting from the Methes, and I think many of us do live this way. But just that idea that we're being generous by giving our lives, by opening up our homes, by having people come and just, eat some food and have a conversation. And the impact is huge on us, right? But we can't even begin to understand the impact that it is on other people. So thank you so much, you guys, for sharing that. I hope that's an inspiration to all of us to maybe this week say, who can I invite over? And just, even if it's just coffee, you guys, it doesn't have to be, like Aaron said, your house doesn't have to be clean. It doesn't have to be a huge meal. Maybe it's just a cup of coffee and some store-bought cookies. But it might give you an opportunity to maybe be a blessing to someone else. So thanks you guys so much for sharing your story, and thanks for coming up here.
Thank you.